Hi everybody, this is Kevin and welcome back to another video. And today, I would like to share my thoughts on Tales of Graces F, which I played the remastered version on the PS5, and that released a few months ago at the beginning of the year actually, in January. And I think it's available on every console, on the PS4, PS5, PC, Nintendo Switch, and even Xbox. So whichever platform you prefer, I strongly recommend picking it up. But before we had the remastered version, the game was released all the way back in 2009 on the Nintendo Wii, only in Japan. And then a few years later, they released it on the PS3, where they added the F, which the F not only stands for the power of friendship, but when we get to the spoiler section, the future, because I think it's the epilogue section of the game that they added with the PS3 re-release, and I guess you can say remaster all the way back then. But yeah, it released, of course, on the PS3 in Japan again, and then a few years later in 2012, the US North American release, full and English dub. And that was at a time when, you know, you had these JRPGs released in Japan, and then a year or two later, they'd release in the US, and then, because they had to dub it, because, you know, it isn't how things are nowadays, where they're being done at the same time. And yeah, the English dub's done last, but it's still all released together. Like, even going back a ways, Persona 5, when it originally released, I think in either 2016 or 2017, that was another game that was a few years later. And even, like, Yakuza Like a Dragon, but you could say it's for better or for worse, the fact that things get dual releases. I mean, I guess the Trail series is still catching up, but by November, or whenever Kai no Kiseki Beyond the Horizon releases, they'll be caught up. Regardless, to celebrate the Tales series' 30th anniversary, the producers and the people involved with Bandai Namco put together a bunch of little interviews, and they said, we're going to re-release and remaster a number of the Tales games, and this does not factor into the Tales of Symphonia remaster from 2023, which was a good remaster. It's just people played the Switch version that sucks. The PS4 version's fine, but I guess you can still play it on PC, where you get the dual pack with Dawn of the New World if you like Pokemon Tales. But yeah, they wanted to focus on the games that are, you know, stuck on the PS3 or PS2 or even the PS1 games, as well as release some only in Japan games, because I think there's quite a few Tales games that are still without a proper translation or proper re-release. Wasn't it like Tales of Destiny or Tales of Rebirth? They just announced like a fan translation after many years, which I think that's a PS2 game. So it'll be interesting to see what the next Tales game is in the remaster, the 30th anniversary remaster series is, because there were reports that it was going to be Tales of Xillia, maybe Tales of Xillia 1 and 2 as a dual pack, but we'll see. You definitely are probably going to see Tales of Abyss, but I'd say all the more recent ones, like Vesperia that had the definitive edition, Symphonia just had its remaster, and then Zestiria, Berseria, and Arise are all recent, so it's not going to be any of those games. It'll be like the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 games. But anyway, after playing this game, I absolutely loved it, man. And I've talked about this a lot in whether it's other videos or live streams. The more Tales games I play, the more I appreciate the series. My favorite Tales game is Tales of Berseria. The first Tales game I ever played was Tales of Symphonia, but this one's right up there. Berseria is still my favorite. Like, there's no topping that. What a great cast of characters. Symphonia is also up there because of, like, the nostalgia and playing at a young age. But playing this game, man, it's like, if I played this back in the day on the PS3, I would have loved it. Probably one of my favorite Tales games as well. And what I really liked about the game in particular is the fact that there's all these different arcs. You know, it starts off as the childhood arc, which is about 2 or 3 hours, and you play as the characters when they're younger. I think they're like 10 years old, we'll say, because there's a 7-year time skip. And at that point, they're like 17, 18. So, they're around 10 years old. And then you play through that. You see them all bond together as kids. Then you get to the heart of the story in the present day. And then when you get to the epilogue, it's like either a half year or a year, somewhere around there, where you get the epilogue of the story. And I really wish more games would do that. I know Final Fantasy 16 did something like that. I haven't played Final Fantasy 16, and that's kind of a mixed received game, so who really knows. But it's cool to see stuff like that. Of course, games have done that, but it's just nice to go back and play something else. And I really like, despite the fact that the game is, you know, it's like 15 years old, 2009. I mean, shit, it's older than 15 years old. It still holds up incredibly well for the combat. It reminds me a lot of the Symphonia combat, and this game I think released after Vesperia, which that was an odd time for the Tales series where you had like so many different homes. When I think of Tales, I sort of think of it being a PlayStation title because, you know, Abyss on the PS2, Xillia 1 and 2 on the PS3, this game I guess on the PS3, but also the Wii, and then the other games like Berseria, Zestiria, Rise on the PS4, but then you had Symphonia on the GameCube, you had Vesperia on the 360, they had all these different homes. So, you know, I just think of it that way. So like most of my reviews, I'm going to have my spoiler-free section first, and then whenever the timestamp indicates, my spoiler section, and then I'll have my final thoughts and outro as well. Although for this spoiler-free section, there might be some early game spoilers, because in the case of Tales of Graces F, you have the childhood arc, which is around 2 or 3 hours, then the main story, then the epilogue, and I kind of need to spoil some stuff from the childhood arc to talk about the main story and the other characters who join the party. So as I was trying to say, the combat of this game reminds me of a lot of Symphonia, where it's not quite like Berseria yet, where you can move around. You know, of course, you see the enemies on the overworld, you walk into them, and you'll have a battle. It's an action battle and all that stuff. But it's like Symphonia, where you're on a diagonal line, and you can only go to and from the enemy. It's not like Berseria, where you can move around more freely, also like Arise. And you have these different points where you actually have to guard and sort of stand back to recover the points, and then when you attack, you use the points, which is something difficult for me, because when I play these games, I know there's more strategy involved, but when I play them, I just button mash and do my attacks and hope to win. Like, there's no strategy. Hell, I beat Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix by button mashing. No guarding, no dodging, just button mash. So, it's difficult for me to dodge, but I did learn that. And I enjoyed the combat so much in this game. They have the title system like all the other Tales games do. And the way it works is there's like 5 different levels, and then you can master the title. And as you learn the 5 levels, you'll get new abilities, whether it's a new art, whether it's a new, HP increase, defense increase, attack increase, etc., etc. So your first 3 little improvements you get there for each title are easy, but then the final 2 take more experience points, or SP in this case. So you want to sort of get the 3 and then switch to a title, get the 3, switch to a title. That way you can spread out your stats more evenly and learn all the abilities, and then go back, and as you complete quests, you'll get more SP. And I really enjoyed switching the titles and playing with all the different characters. Although I definitely played more of Asbel, just because, you know, he's the main character, swordsman. That's my play style. Of course, you have Sheria, who uses magic, and Pascal and some of the others. So that was nice. There's so much content in the game, from just having the side quests. And honestly, as much as I love the game, that's one of the flaws, is you can miss out on the side quests because they want you to sort of go back to the towns after each event and talk to NPCs and then check in and do the requests, and you can miss out on a lot of stuff. And as you progress the story, you can't go back, which is kind of a shame. Although other Tales games have done that, I would have appreciated if there was like something in the map that would say, okay, go back here and talk to the NPCs and do this quest, otherwise you're going to miss it, especially with the time skips. You want to, and for all the skits. And that's always been a thing with the Tales series too, is having the skits, having all the dialogue. The skits were so funny in this game. I think there's over 400 skits, and there's even more like DLC skits that were never dubbed, which actually got them to dub them in this game. And I should go over the voice actor, because I do play these games with the English dub. Especially, like, you can talk about dubs now, how they're not as good or they're going down in quality, but dubs from like the 2000s to early 2010s, absolutely kino, and a lot of great voice actors here. We had Bryce Papenbrook voicing Asbel, Cassandra Lee Morris as Sophie, Steve Saley as Hubert, Laura Bailey as Sheria, Jamison Price as Malik, Kate Higgins as Pascal, David Vincent as Richard. And then for some of the other minor characters, you had Wendy Lee, you had KG Tang, DC Douglas, Jessica Strauss, Keith Silverstein, and Lauren Landa. Now, for those DLC skits that I mentioned, they actually redubbed the game and got pretty much every voice actor to return except for Laura Bailey, because she's sort of done with her anime roles. It's kind of a shame, as great as a voice actor she is. She really only does the big budget titles and things like that. So they had Alexis Tipton replace Laura Bailey, which she actually replaced Laura Bailey in a number of roles. Probably the most famous one being Kid Trunks in Dragon Ball, which Laura Bailey voiced way back when. Alexis Tipton voices Kid Trunks now. So they all sounded pretty much the same, and if I didn't tell you that, you probably wouldn't know the difference. And just the heart and soul put into the skits, and just how the skits play out. If you play any Tales game, you know how expressive all the animations are of the characters and their faces, and they do little things in this game in particular where they sort of turn them chibi, and it's just really cute. So I love that. Another thing I really liked about the game is the fact that there's not too many party members. There's 7 party members altogether, but for the most part, you have 6 party members, and that's the perfect number. Unless you're playing a game like Trails into Reverie, when, 50, 60 party members is actually manageable. I prefer most JRPGs to have 6 or 8 party members. Otherwise, there's just too many. But the Trail series is the only series I'll make the exception because they can actually handle having a million party members, whereas most games, especially the Tales series, like 6 to 8 is fine. I think Berseria had 6 party members. Arise had 6 party members. This game has 6, technically 7, so it all works out. Go over some of the characters too. I just mentioned them. We have the main cast right there, which will go from left to right. There's Malik, when I first met him in the story, I thought, oh, he's going to be like the 25-year-old boomer, which we learned that he's actually in his 40s, so it makes more sense that he's a boomer, and a typical Kino JRPG party to have the old boomer in the party. There's Pascal with the silver hair there, which, God, I love Pascal. What a funny character. Hubert with the blue hair, Sheria with the pink hair, and Sheria, a lot of best girls in the game. You could make the case that, either Sheria, Pascal, or Sophie are best girls, but for me it's Sheria. Then our hero, Asbel, Richard, followed by Sophie, and Ufotable, who they've done the anime openings and the little anime cutscenes that happen in the game, and I think all the Tales games. They did the little anime cutscenes here, as well as the opening, which the opening is fucking Kino. All the Tales openings are Kino. My favorite's probably still Tales of Berseria, but Tales of Symphonia is good. This one's good, too. So I mentioned the childhood arc before, where they uncover Sophie. They meet her in the flowers, and she gets her name because there's a flower called a Sopharia, which is the same color as her hair, and they decide to give her the name Sophie, which is so cute. Here's the skits when they were kids. You can see, like, their expressive faces and seeing how everything plays out there. Asbel, cut that out. What's wrong with you? It's so cute right there. You run into Richard, and this is the meeting. And that's what I love so much about the childhood arc is the characters meeting for the first time. And though they haven't, okay, so Hubert and Asbel are brothers. So obviously they're really close, and Sheria is the childhood friend. But Asbel just meets Sophie and Richard just now as we play through the game, and it shows you how the bonds are forged by having a near-death experience like that. So, lots of good stuff, and they form their friendship pact right in front of the tree, and it's so good, man. That's why I said the F stands for the power of friendship. Now, I'm going to save some stuff for the spoiler section, but I kind of have to talk about this right now just so I can get to some of the other stuff. Obviously, the childhood arc doesn't... This is like minor spoilers, but we'll get to the more intense spoilers later. But the childhood arc is around 2 to 3 hours if you talk to all the NPCs and try to do all the side quests. And what happens is they're making their way back to the kingdom where Prince Richard is from, and they go through the catacombs, and they come in contact with this being who is later revealed to be Lambda. And it attacks Asbel, knocks him out, and then Sophie's like, okay, I'm going to protect you, Asbel, and she gets stabbed by Lambda, seemingly killed. And we run into Asbel's father, Aston, who basically says that Sophie's dead. And Asbel believes Sophie to be dead, so he runs away to become a royal knight, which basically sets up the whole story here. And in also doing so, we learn that Aston sent Hubert over to Strata, one of the other kingdoms, so he can get his influence over there, and he was going to make Asbel the new Lord of Lant, but Asbel runs away and he gives Hubert up for adoption. So Aston is left to defend the kingdom for himself. So we get the time skip 7 years later, and we meet the base boomer Malik, as well as the older Asbel. And you saw the younger characters in the skit, but we see the return of Sheria, and also, of course, the return of Sophie, where that's where you get the whole thing about the Sopharia. There's Hubert, who shows up again as a complete badass, which Hubert early on was a more timid, shy, the younger brother, but now he's a badass. He dual wields, and he also has like guns at his attacks, which is pretty cool. And then also running into Richard again, and you get the power of friendship key now. So I just want, and then there's Pascal too, which he says something about friendship. Oh my gosh, friends are awesome! I totally want to make a friendship pact with everyone. So lots of great stuff. I think now I'll go to the spoiler warning though, but before I do that, let me just give some thoughts for the non-spoiler viewers. And basically, I love the game. I strongly recommend it. I would say for the main story, it took me around 70 hours. And I was trying to get the platinum in this game to complete the post-game. There's a post-game dungeon called the Zone Cage. And some of the post-game trophies for the titles, you need to get all the characters. You need to unlock 100 titles. And then one of the characters, 80 titles. I got 100 titles for Asbel. I didn't get the 100 titles or the 80 for the other characters, but I did for Asbel because he was the character I played the most, and it just became too much of a grind that I'm like, dude, I got to 110 hours trying to do post-game stuff and doing the Zone Cage, and it got to the point where I loved the game. I loved the story. I loved the main story, all the side quests, the epilogue, everything. The epilogue was key now, man. I got to talk about that in the spoiler section. But playing as much of the post-game as I did, it got to the point where it's like, I hate this fucking game. So I said, let me stop playing it. So I strongly recommend it. Just do the main story, and I need to do away with this for myself. Like, stop trying to go after platinums. It's just been in my nature for all these years of playing video games that I see the platinum, and it's relatively easy. It just requires a lot of grinding, and I was looking at some guides. It'll take you like 150 to 200 hours to get the fucking platinum, and, you know, I need to move on to other games because do I really want to spend 6 months playing this game? I mean, I've been playing for like 2 months now. It's crazy. But yeah, great game. You just want to avoid going for the platinum. There's so much stuff to do. Basically, it's almost like a Trails game where after every important piece of dialogue, you can go back to town and see more cutscenes, see more side quests. That was one minor nitpick I had. There's a lot of missable side quests if you don't go back to the towns. And you don't get a way to really travel. You don't really get your ship, we'll say, till much later in the game. So you have to do a lot of walking. There's no overworld like Tales of Symphonia or Vesperia. It's similar to Berseria, actually, where you just walk through hallways and stuff, which I like that. I mean, the overworld is fine. I do enjoy the overworld, but there's a lot of just walking through hallways, and then when you get to the dungeons, it's like, oh, if I go left, I get the treasure chest. If I go right, I continue the main story. So some people like that, some people don't like that. I like that. There's a few secret areas which you can find the hints in the game, where you'll get to like the beach resorts, or you can just look up online the way to get to it, and you go there, you get some fun little side quests. Of course, there's swimsuits in the game. There's a lot of outfits too with the titles, where you can change the costumes of the characters, and there's some references to the older Tales games, so that was cool. Again, the voice acting was great. The music by Motoi Sakuraba, absolutely incredible. A legendary composer, and he's up there. He's done all the Tales games. I think pretty much every Tri-Ace game, all the Star Ocean games, even some Dark Souls. And I really like the tracks in this game, especially the battle theme, because the battle theme changed depending where you were. So it was different if you were in a forest, in a desert area, in a snow area. Of course, like the final dungeon, the music always changed. I really like that. All the character themes were great. Love the music. Love the battle system. Love the titles. Again, the only problem I really have with the game is the missable side quests and the post-game. But the post-game, of course, is optional. So it is what it is. So now I'll go to the spoiler section. But again, if you couldn't already tell, I strongly recommend the game. If you haven't played it, go play it. It's probably really cheap now because it's been out since January and it's on every console. Or if you want to be an absolute madman, you can go, I guess, get the Wii or the PS3 version. But the remaster version is good because they didn't alter anything. They kept all the dialogue from the original. And with the grade shop, which the grade shop has always been in the Tales games, you can unlock the grade shop at the start of the game. So I actually unlocked everything in the grade shop. I guess I had certain things turned off. Like the things I did have turned on were to double my, not gold, gold, because it's just easier to grind money. So I did that. And then when I got to a certain point, I did turn on the, I think it's double, and then there's also a 5 times SP. I turned that on just to level up my abilities faster, but I never turned it on for the actual level for the character. That was fine. I didn't need to do that. And there's also a way you can like double and 5 times your damage. But the only problem with that is you do a lot of damage, but at the same time, you take a lot of damage. So there's that. And of course, there's also optional boss fights. There's a couple of dragons. There's 3 dragons where you can fight in the optional bosses. And then there's a couple of old Tales characters, which there's 3 of them. I only ran into 1 of them. I think the other 2 were in the final dungeon, the bonus dungeon in the post game. But the one you can fight at the Warrior's Roost, and he's one of the characters from Tales of Legendia. But this is also the case in, like for example, in Tales of Arise, you can fight Aizen and Etna, and then in Tales of Berseria, you can actually fight Mila and Jude. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, on to the spoiler section. So for those who haven't played the game, you have been warned, but otherwise, again, strongly recommend. So the spoiler section is that Richard has this being known as Lambda who sort of possesses him and turns him evil. And what happened when we reunited with him during the 7-year time skip, he actually possessed him during the time skip 7 years ago after Lambda presumably killed Sophie. He possessed Richard, and then anytime something crazy happened with Richard, he would get possessed. You see the one eye is glowing, but then he's able to suppress it for a little bit. We actually end up fighting Malik, which is pretty funny because, you know, he's our mentor, and then, now I'll grant you no quarter, fight me, Asbel, and you whoop his ass. It was still cool to face off against him. Here's another one of the anime cutscenes when Richard actually returns and becomes King Richard. And I really enjoyed these cutscenes. They were spaced out quite well around all the key moments in the story. You know, we think this is a moment of triumph where King Richard becomes the king, but of course the power has gone to his head, and also he has Lambda infesting him, and so he actually leads an invasion on Lant, where Asbel is from, and you have a battle against him, and we see Sophie unleash her true power yet again, and Richard is like, no, you can't do this, look at that, it's like a mean face, you can't do this to me, how could you? And you even see that Asbel and Hubert are like, whoa, how's Sophie that strong? So he's lying down defeated, and this is a funny segment where we're back in Lant. You know, Richard leaves, and we're trying to clean up the mess because the battle is in the courtyard, so everything's destroyed. And that's one of the missable side quests where you have to get a flower for one of the quests. But after Richard destroys the courtyard, you can't pick flowers there anymore. So that's what I was saying before with the side quests, how many of them can be missable if you don't know you're doing it. You know, I hate to say it's a guide game, and it seems like a lot of JRPGs are almost guide games, especially if you want to 100% them. And yeah, I missed a couple of the side quests, which is kind of annoying because it also locks out the skits, and the skits have all the great voice acting, and it's like, no, I don't want to miss out on that. But in this case, one of Hubert's associates takes a liking to Sharia, and later on in the game, he actually confesses that he loves her, but at first he ties her up, and he's like, oh no! It's crazy. So we rescue Sharia, and you get this cute moment where Asbel and Sharia obviously have feelings for each other, and it's like, no, Baka soon. And so they hold hands, and as this whole cutscene's going on, you know, there's a really cute moment between Sharia and Asbel, and Sophie's like, oh, this is young love. And you have Pascal talking with Malik, which I think they said in the game, so I already mentioned Malik's like he's the 4-year-old boomer, but Pascal is also older than our 18-year-old heroes, where she's like in her 20s, so she knows a little bit. She's like, oh, you guys like each other. So it was really funny to constantly hear her talk about things, and she's like the mechanic of the group, which I think I have that in the slideshow as well, where she's trying to fix one of the Valkanists, and she breaks out her hammer and just starts like banging on it, and it fixes it. It's great. So we meet President Paradine here, And he's voiced by DC Douglas, who has such a Kino voice. Like, man, one of the great English voice actors who, in the Trail series, famous as Rufus Albarea. And also in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as Yoshikage Kira. Probably the best villain in the entire series from Stardust Crusaders. While editing this video, I realized that I made a mistake in saying that Yoshikage Kira is the villain of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, Stardust Crusaders, when in fact he is actually the villain of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. So I just wanted to clarify that before I got commenters saying otherwise. I do know my JoJo's, but it's been a while since I watched it, and when I record my videos, I just go off the cuff. I don't have any script or anything. I just ramble on. And this is also a way for me to say that the best JoJo's part is actually Part 2, Battle Tendency, along with the best JoJo, Joseph Joestar. However, Yoshikage Kira is still the best villain from Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. But here's the Valkanists, and the Valkanists are basically these things that, there's 3 of them throughout the region, and they harness the magical energy known as Krios, which Krios is how our characters can use arts in the universe of the game. So, to solve the problem, Pascal takes out her hammer, and BAM! Kapow! She fixes it just like that. And as this is happening, Richard, you filthy mongrels! Which, every time I heard Richard in the game, you know, because he's voiced by David Vincent, it reminds me of Gilgamesh from the Fate series. Probably because they both have blonde hair, too. But, you know, I find the sight of your face utterly disgusting. So, we don't defeat Richard because he like sends monsters in that particular scene, and then he runs off. We defeat the monsters, obviously. So we continue trekking to the desert of Strata. And there were a couple scenes here where Hubert commented on Sheria's skirt, and he's like, it's too short, it's distracting, how could you wench? Which, it's not short enough, actually. So, we get on a boat, Pascal's about to barf, and she has this infatuation with bananas. There's a bunch of different discoveries in the game where it's like, this is one of them, I think, and you click on it, and I think it leads to a trophy if you find all the discoveries, but you get some SP, and you get some items, which with the bananas, you can craft them to make food, and the food has always been a thing in the Tales series as well, which in this game, you can cook the food before and after battles. It'll give you a stat increase. Some of it increases your SP gain, some your XP gain, some your GALD. So food and cooking is very important, and also each character has a favorite dish, and if you cook it, you get a skit. So that was always fun as well. Here's Sophie's favorite dish, the crablets. And that's what I was talking about, the skits and their cute chibis. Here's another one where, and that was a great story throughout the whole game. Just Sophie, this lifeless being who doesn't really have emotions and doesn't quite understand things. We later learn that she's Protos Haste from another planet, from Vodra. And Sheria, being the motherly figure, is like, okay, everything's gonna be okay, Sophie. We'll work through it. I'll show you what it means to feel and love, and it's a beautiful story. Absolutely loved it. And there's Pascal saying, you know, we saw earlier the power of friendship. She wanted to make a friendship pact of everything, and you see that, like, she's trying to not really make a move with Hubert, but show affection to him, and Hubert is standoffish, but it later builds where Hubert grows feelings for Pascal, and she doesn't quite understand that. There's Poisson, who is one of the Amarcians, which Pascal is also an Amarcian. There's the place known as the Amarcian Enclave, where they're all from, and we also meet Fourier, Pascal's sister. And here was one of the minor antagonists in the story, Kurt, who is an old friend of Malik. And you actually you meet Kurt, and then, like, maybe an hour later you fight him, and then he dies. Like, it's so anticlimactic. It would have been cool to fight Kurt maybe 2 or 3 times, and then he dies, but you meet him, and then right away he dies. So you defeat him in battle. He agrees that Malik and his friends are strong. We're no longer equals. And then Richard shows up and is going to, like, attack the Vulcanists, steal the Krios power. And to stop it, Kurt uses his let me show you, there's a better shot of his sword. Well, I guess not. Maybe I didn't have a screenshot of the sword. But he gets his sword, which is like a double-sided blade, and he like stabs the mechanism to halt the power of the Volcanus, and he dies. And so he says, it's his parting wish, save my country, save my people, which we do. So that's the first name drop of Lambda. And Richard shows up again. He's just, no, you're in my way. I'm going to kill all of you. And he's taken over the world. And so we actually get a spaceship to travel to Fodra. Now, this has been a thing in every Tales game, I'm pretty sure, where you go to another world, and whether it's outer space or a parallel universe or whatever. So we go to Fodra, to outer space. You get this Kido cutscene with the anime art style, the anime cutscene, and you go off to Fodra, and it's just awesome. So there it is. The blue planet here is actually the home world, and the red planet is Fodra, which they mention as they're exploring it, that everything's dead, and what happened to this wasteland, how did this happen? And so we meet Emerald, who is, the steward of Fodra, I guess. And, it's a cute little scene with Pascal, which, that was the thing, Pascal always thought Sophie was so cute and always wanted to hug her, and Sophie's like, no, stay away from me, I don't want to hug you, because she can't really show emotions too well. And you see even of her face, she's not really reciprocating, but she's letting Pascal hug her, and they're both blushing, so a cute little scene right there. We have a, not quite final confrontation with Richard just yet, but he's fully fused with Lambda. He's like, yeah, you mongrels finally showed up. So we attack him, we defeat him, and then actually this bitch, Emerald, fuses with Lambda and becomes evil, so we fight her, and then we go back to the homeworld, and, she's done and dusted. Richard's still the final boss along with Lambda. So we go back to the homeworld before going to the World's Eye, and they do the friendship pact back at the tree, and everyone shows up back at launch, even Fourier, and she says to Pascal, you stinky meat, you gotta take a bath, no F ands or buts. And, of course, before, you have this emotional scene where everyone's saying something before the final battle, but after daylight comes, you don't have to go to the final dungeon quite yet, so there's a bunch of side quests. Of course, there's Cat's Corner, where you go there, and that's where you can view the previous skits and cutscenes, as well as get some pretty powerful equipment, and Pascal's a cute cat. You also can view some more side quests. Here's one with Aston, where if you talk to Kerry, Asbel, and Hubert's mother, there's a flashback with Aston talking about how much he loved his sons. And here's where I was mentioning the optional boss. This is the guy from, I think, Tales of Legendia, so you can fight him. There's the Turtles, which Dark Turtles, he's an optional boss in the Zone Cage, the post-game dungeon. And there's also the beach resort where everyone gets their swimsuits. And dude, look at Malik's, like, what the fuck is he wearing? He's wearing a Speedo. He's got gloves on. What does he have gloves on? A life preserver and like a bathing cap. Like, what are you wearing, bro? And then you see Pascal has her snorkeler gear on. Sherry is wearing like a proper bathing suit at least. And then you have Sophie's a cute cat girl. So with this, everyone knows that Sharia and Asbel like each other. And, they're just soon about everything. So Malik says, go over to the random dudes over there and try to work your charm. So once you confront Asbel, you can show him that you're ready for him. So she goes over there. Asbel at this point had his back turned. He turns it around here for this cutscene. And Sharia is trying to make a move and says, oh, hey, big fella, how about you and me blow this popsicle stand and go have some real fun? And as she says that, she realizes that, that's Asbel. No, how could I do that? And they're all praising her because she's shooting her shot in front of Asbel. And can I just say, god damn, Sharia is pretty fucking hot. Like, in that bathing suit, I don't care if it's a one piece, she's sexy as hell. So that was a nice pose right there. And she gets all embarrassed and runs away. Now, there's also a side character I didn't even mention early on in the game, but part of the Royal Knights, of course, there was Malik. There's also another lady named Victoria. And in one of the side quests later, you run into her, and Malik is donning his swimsuit yet again, and then she's got like a matching one. He's got the purple Speedo, she's got the matching purple bikini. And she shows up, and I'm just thinking, like, god damn, they used all these assets and these excellent angles on a random side character. Hey, look at that. You got side boob, you got under boob, you got a little bit of ass crack. Like, shit, look at this. So, look at Hubert looking away. Like, oh, the president's going to need to know about this. So, those are all the important side quests I wanted to mention. Now we get ready for the final battle, which throughout it all, you know, our heroes constantly talked about, okay, Richard's evil now. We got to kill Richard. But Asbel and Sophie always said, no, Richard's our friend. We can't kill him. And Asbel, even after the final battle of fighting Richard, he's like, no, you're my friend. I'll never abandon you, Richard. And we save him. And as he turns back to normal, you saw him earlier when I showed you he was like the corrupted Richard. Now he's back to normal. And then we faced off against Lambda. Which this reminded me so much. After defeating Lambda, I was going to call him Reen because that's my comparison, but Asbel and Lambda have a heart-to-heart, and it reminds me so much of the Trails series. Spoilers for Trails into Reverie, but particularly Trails into Reverie, when Reen and Ishmelga Reen have their heart-to-heart, and even in that case in Reverie, when Reen had the different colored eye, his was like a gold eye, I think. Same thing happens here, and Lambda fuses with Asbel to remain dormant, and this way Asbel has spared him and he can show him a proper life, because there's also a bunch of backstory in Fodor where you learn that Lambda was created by a much nicer scientist than Emerald, who showed compassion and wanted to see him grow. So, great little twist right there. And then we have our heroes all reunited, finally ready to go home, and it's so good. And then you go back and you get another great cutscene where the Sofarias are beginning to glow, and how pretty everything is. And then you get the credits, and I love this one so much. It shows like the whole story, where as children, the childhood arcs, like all the major important story moments basically turn into a nice little image right there. And after that, there's actually another anime cutscene, which I'm going to save for the end, because it plays both at the end of the main story and after the epilogue. But then you get the epilogue, Lineage and Legacies, where they're leaving a flower. It's a Sofaria, funnily enough, on Aston's grave, and these are all the other descendants of the Lant bloodline. So Asbel and Sophie, you can see Asbel has a different colored eye because of Lambda, and Sophie has a different outfit too, a very cute outfit, I might add. They're paying their respects to Aston, and Sophie starts having these visions of this person we later find out to be the Little Queen, and then later on the Fodor Queen, which Sophie is sort of connected because of her being Protoss Haste. So she sees that, and then you get this funny moment with Kerry, like, you're nearly 20 years old, it's time for you to start thinking about marriage. And Asbel's like, well, I'm thinking of this one, which we all know he's thinking of Sharia, but it's just funny how in this game they say, oh, 20's old, you gotta get married now. It's like, whoa, I feel personally attacked over here. But you also get a great cutscene with Kerry meeting Aston for the very first time at Lant Manor. And he mentions how if you can love flowers, you can love people too. And that also signifies the garden that he had. And also going back to how Sophie is basically the Sofaria, and how Asbel cared for the young flower who he hardly knew to grow into a beautiful little lady. So, this is the part where he runs into Sherry again. Again, I forget whether Lineage and Legacies was a half a year or a full year after the main story, but something like that in the epilogue. And so he runs into Sherry again, and they're both blushing. Rena of Richard again, now is the Good King. And we... you even have a skip where they're shipping the two of them. Like, everyone knows. Everyone except... Well, even Asbel and Sherry know, but they just can't admit it quite yet. So Pascal shows up again, and this is where we have the confrontation with the Fodor Queen, who is the final boss of the epilogue. And then Asbel uses the powers of Lambda to go full Ishmelga Reen mode. And as the Fodor Queen disappears, she gives her memories to Sophie and says, will you take what's left of me with you, please? And for the very first time, Sophie cries, which is a plot point early on in the game where she mentioned how other people were crying. I think she mentioned this all the way back with Kurt. Like, she couldn't cry when Kurt died, but now she can finally experience what tears feel like, and she starts crying. And the little queen gave me all her tears, and they're all back together, and her beautiful smile. Everything's great. So after that, our characters all bid farewell. This is where Fourier actually ships Hubert with Pascal, and because she mentions once again how Pascal stinks, you know, she's like a mangy stray cat. Here, take this cat. And she like picks her up by her neck like you would a cat, and gives her to Hubert and Pascal. Meow, go easy on me, okay? Meow. Which before one of the final battles as well, not Richard in the epilogue, the final battle with the Fodra Queen, you can talk to all the NPCs, and Hubert basically confesses his love to Pascal there, which is so cool. And they get some bro Kino with the fist bump. Would it be a JRPG without a Kino fist bump? I don't think so. So this is where basically Sophie fixes the two of them up together, and they confess their feelings, and they're going to get married. Although the one little nitpick I have, they never kissed. Like, dude, they got to kiss. Like, what's going on here? And then we're back at the friendship tree with the original three, making their friendship pact once again. And it's just so good, man. So good. And this is where Sophie says, I'll watch over this world forever. Because, again, with her being Protos Haste, not a real human, she's basically an immortal. And that's what she becomes. And this was actually the anime cutscene that played at the very end of the game before Lineage and Legacies. Which, this is a very impactful cutscene even then. But seeing how the whole epilogue played out, watching it again, it was even better, man. So, we'll go through it. It says, once there was a young boy who discovered a lost seed. That's Asbel discovering Sophie. He planted it in his yard, and he took care of it every day. Now, when I first saw this during the original ending, I thought this was actually Asbel and Sophie's kid. But after playing through the epilogue, you realize that, no, this is actually Asbel and Sheria's kid. Over time, the lost seed grew up and blossomed into a beautiful flower. What do you think happened to the seed after that? It turned into a bright, shining star that watched over everyone. This was its way of thanking the boy who had been so very kind to it. It's the one we all know best. And at the very beginning of the game, you had the friendship tree. You had Asbel, Richard, and Sophie all engrave their names, and now Lambda's name is there, and it's so fucking keto. And even going back, I think this is my favorite screenshot of the whole thing right there, where Sophie says, it turned into a bright shining star that watched over everyone. It's so fucking good, man. I loved how everything came full circle, and I really do love this game. And even recording this video now, talking about it once again, going through my screenshots, I have even more of an appreciation for it, and I can't recommend it enough, man. It's so good, and they just don't make games like this anymore. It's crazy, man. Like, going back to a game 15 years ago, and I know they still make JRPGs, and a lot of JRPGs are still quite good, but in comparing it to modern AAA games, give me a 15-year-old remastered JRPG over the AAA slop any day of the week. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. A bit long, but that's what I like to do. I like to ramble with these videos. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you play this game, if you plan on playing it. And look forward to whatever's coming next. I haven't really played a real game since I finished this. I've been playing a couple of gacha games, which I've talked about in live streams. So maybe I'll do like a first impressions video on them. Honestly, like, I kind of like them, but at the same time, they feel like work to play, so that might be a ranting and raving episode. But as far as, like, future games I do want to play, I got to get back into the Trails series, especially now that Trails Through Daybreak, Trails Beyond the Horizon, Kai no Kiseki is releasing this fall, and Trails in the Sky the First. So I still got to play Daybreak 1 and 2. I have my Type Moon visual novels, I have Fairy Tail 2, I got so many other games. So at some point, I got to play a real game again instead of the gacha slop. But I love this game, strongly recommend it, though I do not recommend playing the post-game. I recommend the epilogue, but not the post-game dungeon or going for the platinum, because that'll just drive you insane. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and stay tuned for more videos coming soon. Everybody have a great day, and peace out. 99.